You won't believe what happened to this girl. At just 18 years old, she was handed over like merchandise. She had no choice. And what the rancher did to her left the entire town of Campos to Jordão in shock. But before I dive into this story that's going to shake you to your core, make sure to subscribe to the channel and leave a comment. Do you prefer stories of survival, forbidden romance, or unexpected twists? Because the one you're about to hear has all that, and more. A fate marked by pain, a soul wounded by rejection, and a meeting that would change everything forever. Take a deep breath, because this story begins with a heavy silence and a look she would never forget that high up in the mountains, with the cold cutting through her skin and the scent of pine hanging in the air. Eliza trembled, not just from the wind, but from fear. She stood there, arms crossed, watching her father negotiate what was left of her freedom. The house was old, made of cracked wood, and even so, she knew she'd never step inside it again. The man her father was speaking to wore a felt hat, had a scruffy beard, and eyes that didn't blink. His name was Augusto, a rancher known for living alone ever since his wife mysteriously vanished years ago. No one really knew what had happened, but everyone avoided talking about it. And now, Eliza was being handed over to him. "She's yours," as agreed. "No going back," her father said, without even looking at her. Eliza swallowed hard, her hands trembling, but she didn't cry. She'd learned early on that tears were a waste of time. What hurt the most wasn't the transaction. It was being treated like a burden to be passed on. Augusto simply nodded, then turned and walked to the pickup truck idling on the dirt road. "Let's go," he said, flat and cold. No introductions, no comforting words. And still, Eliza followed, because staying felt even worse. In the passenger seat, she clenched her hands in her lap, trying to steady her breath. The winding road looked like a corridor leading into the unknown, flanked by towering pine trees that darkened the path even more. Augusto said nothing, staring at the road as if he weren't driving, but running from some memory that still burned inside him. The radio was off. The air between them was so heavy, it stuck in her throat. And through the window, she watched the town vanish, along with every trace of the life she once knew. The ranch rose in the distance like a forgotten castle, a mansion with tall windows, peeling paint, and wooden porches creaking in the wind. There was an almost spiritual silence in the air, like time had stopped in that place. Eliza shivered. A warning? A bad omen? She didn't know. She just felt that the place held secrets, and she was about to step right into them. Augusto turned off the engine, got out, and opened her door. "Out here, weakness gets you nowhere. Learn that fast," he muttered, then walked away. Inside the house, Eliza was struck by the scent of damp wood and memories that didn't belong to her. Crooked old portraits hung on the walls. An empty armchair still held a neatly folded shawl. It was like someone had just stepped out, but planned to return. An older woman named Dalva, with kind eyes and slow steps, welcomed her without many words. She just pointed toward a room and whispered, "He doesn't like noise." Eliza nodded. She was about to find out that in this place, silence spoke, louder than words. That night, she couldn't sleep. Every creak of the old house felt like a warning. The wind tapping the windows, the floorboards groaning in the hallway, the old clock marking each second like a sentence being served. She thought of her father, of the mother she never knew, of a life where choices never existed. And then, as the clock struck 3 a.m., she heard slow footsteps coming down the hall. They stopped right outside her door. The doorknob turned, but the door didn't open. 1 second, 2, and then silence again. But something had started. Something she couldn't yet understand. The sun hadn't fully risen yet when Eliza heard sharp knocks on the door. 3 short, deliberate taps. She woke up with her heart racing, as if her body already knew the day would be hard. From the other side, Dalva's raspy voice called, "Out, time to get up. The boss doesn't like tardiness." Eliza rubbed her eyes, still in the same clothes from the day before, and slipped on the boots that had been left at the foot of her bed. She walked down the stairs in silence, her stomach churning with anxiety. It felt like every step in that house was hiding something no one dared to speak out loud. In the kitchen, Dalva was making coffee, but there was no comfort in the smell. Everything was functional, without small talk. "He's already out by the corrals, waiting for you," she said without turning around. Eliza simply nodded. She crossed the backyard, the cold mountain air biting her face. The land stretched out too wide for the courage she had left. In the stable, she found Augusto feeding the horses, his expression carved from stone. "You know how to saddle a horse?" he asked, without even glancing at her. "No, sir," she replied. He didn't say a word, just shoved a saddle toward her and pointed to the most restless animal in the barn. She tried. Twice, but her hands shook. The horse pulled away, and the saddle slipped. Augusto watched from a distance, arms crossed, not lifting a finger to help. "You won't last 2 days here like this," he muttered finally. "No one's going to baby you." Eliza felt her throat tighten, but kept her gaze low. She was determined not to cry, not in front of him. She tried again, this time slower, more focused. Adjusted the girth, secured the stirrup, and took a deep breath. The horse snorted, but stayed still. When she turned around, Augusto was gone. He had left without a word, as if that was enough for now. The rest of the day was a marathon of chores. Cleaning the chicken coop, chopping wood, carrying heavy water buckets. For every poorly done task, a sharp scolding. For every small success, no praise at all. Augusto came and went like a ghost, impossible to please. "You see this land? It doesn't respect the weak," he said when she nearly dropped a basket of vegetables. "Either you learn or you leave." And even though every part of her wanted to run, something in those words lit a different kind of fire inside her. Maybe it was pride. Maybe it was the stubborn need to prove, to herself, that she was more than people assumed. At lunchtime, they sat at the table in silence. Only the two of them and Dalva. The sound of cutlery scraping plates was the only noise in the room. Eliza dared a glance at Augusto, who ate slowly, eyes never meeting anyone else's. His hands were large and rough, his gaze fixed on his plate. She wondered what kind of loneliness lived inside that man, because there was something about him that didn't match all that coldness. A weight in his shoulders, a sadness in the way he breathed, like he hadn't just buried someone, but also the will to live. And somehow that stirred something deep inside her. That afternoon, a thin drizzle began to fall over the farmhouse. Roofs. Eliza was in the barn sorting tools when she heard voices in the distance. 2 men arguing near the front fence. One of them sounded agitated. The other was Augusto. She crept closer and caught parts of the conversation. "I don't want you here again. Got it? You know this isn't settled yet. It's already been taken care of." The stranger replied something she couldn't make out, but Augusto's face changed. He went pale, then angry. They stared each other down for a few tense seconds before the visitor turned and walked off without looking back. Augusto returned to work as if nothing had happened, but Eliza could see the tension in his shoulders. That exchange unsettled her. There was a story there, a part of Augusto's life that hadn't been buried, and it might be dangerous. That night, lying in bed with the sound of rain tapping on the roof, she thought about that enigmatic man. Why would someone choose to live so isolated? Why did he treat people like they didn't deserve to get close? And what, after all, was he hiding behind those heavy, haunted eyes? Without knowing it, Eliza was stepping into a maze where every silence was a clue, and there was no turning back now. The next morning, the cold felt even sharper. A thick fog blanketed the fields, and Eliza could barely see the fence on the other side of the pasture. Still, she got up before sunrise. She was determined to prove she could handle it. She slipped on the heavy coat Dalva had left for her and stepped outside in silence, her footsteps steady. She found Augusto already in the stables, looking as if he hadn't slept at all. "You're learning how to milk a cow today," he said, tossing a bucket in her direction. The cow, restless, shook its head. Eliza took a deep breath. It's now or never, she thought. Her hands were trembling, not from the cold, from the pressure. Each time she tried, the milk slipped through her fingers. Augusto watched from a distance, his stare sharp as a blade. After several failed attempts, she dropped the bucket in frustration and punched the ground. "This is impossible," she shouted, her voice cracking. That's when, for the first time, he stepped closer. He knelt beside her, picked up the bucket firmly, and said, "It's not about strength. It's rhythm. Technique. Got it?" His tone was still stern, but not harsh. For the first time, there was patience. He demonstrated the motion with his large, calloused hands. Eliza watched him as if the moment weren't real. A man who barely spoke to her yesterday was now guiding her, sitting close, his voice softer. When she tried to mimic his movements, he held her hands, directing her with steady pressure. "Like this. Don't rush. The cow senses your tension," he explained. She tried again. This time, a thin stream of milk trickled down. She smiled. "See? Not impossible," he said with a small nod. For a brief second, their eyes met, and in that instant, something invisible between them began to shift. That night, Eliza couldn't sleep. It wasn't fear. It wasn't longing. It was confusion. Something inside her chest felt strange. A mix of admiration, fear, and curiosity. Augusto wasn't the monster she had imagined, but he wasn't easy to read either. He was like an old house full of locked doors, ones she both wanted and feared to open. Just before falling asleep, she heard footsteps again in the hallway. They stopped in front of her door, just like the first night. But this time, instead of stepping back, Eliza leaned closer, pressing her ear to the wood. Nothing, only silence. But she knew he had stopped there. The next day, something felt off. Augusto was quieter than usual. During breakfast, Dalva tried to make small talk, but he stood up in the middle of the meal and left without a word. Did something happen? Eliza asked. The cook hesitated. Today's the 12th, Teresa's birthday. Eliza frowned. Who's Teresa? Dalva lowered her voice. His wife. She vanished without a trace. No one ever found out what happened. Eliza froze. That explained a lot. Or maybe nothing at all. A chill spread through her chest. Now she understood why that man carried so much pain. Later that afternoon, while feeding the pigs, Eliza heard a sharp noise coming from the barn. She ran over, thinking an animal had escaped. But what she found was Augusto kneeling in front of an open chest. Inside, old letters, a shawl that smelled of lavender, and a faded photograph. He hadn't noticed her. His usually hardened face was wet. He was crying silently, like a man carrying the weight of the world. Eliza quietly stepped away, not making a sound. For the first time, she saw Augusto not as dangerous, but as broken, shattered from the inside out. That night, she made a cup of chamomile tea and left it at his door. She said nothing, just placed it there and went to bed. When she woke the next morning, the cup was empty and washed in the sink. It was a small gesture, but it said more than words ever could. Eliza felt her heart beat a little differently. Maybe, in that forgotten old house, two strangers were starting to see themselves in each other's cracks. But little did she know, the past wasn't buried. And in the days to come, the shadow of the lost wife would return in the most unexpected way, bringing with it a secret that could destroy everything. She woke to the sound of distant thunder, the sky over Campos du Jordão, cloaked in dark clouds that seemed to promise more than just a passing storm. Eliza looked out the window and felt her chest tighten. Something in the air had shifted. The silence in the house was thicker, heavier, as if waiting for something that hadn't yet happened. She walked downstairs slowly and found no sign of Augusto in the stables. Dalva was in the kitchen, but her face carried a rare tension. There was a visitor early this morning, a strange man. He didn't stay long, but he left Augusto shaken. Eliza didn't ask anything else. She just swallowed her unease and headed out to the fields. She found Augusto sitting on the porch, staring into the distance. In his hands, he clutched a crumpled letter. When he noticed her presence, he tried to hide it, but it was too late. Eliza had already seen the red wax seal, the old paper. "Is it from her?" she asked in a soft voice. He looked at her. For a moment, his once cold eyes were now damp, unsettled. "Yes," he replied. "It came yesterday. Says she's alive." The words hit Eliza like lightning to the chest. Teresa, the wife everyone thought was dead, was alive. And more than that, she was coming back. Eliza didn't know what to say. It felt like everything she had lived in that house had been erased with a single line of ink. Augusto stood up and muttered, "Some wounds never heal. They just bleed slower." Then he walked inside and locked the door behind him. Those words haunted her the entire day. She tried to work, but her hands were shaking. By late afternoon, she heard hurried footsteps and voices at the front gate. She rushed over and saw a slim woman with dark hair and a proud expression. She carried a small suitcase and a strange smile. Teresa got her presence through everything. Into disarray, Augusto went silent for the rest of the day. Teresa acted like she had never left, complained about the dust on the furniture, the things out of place, and looked Eliza up and down like she was inspecting an object. "Who's this?" she asked. Augusto hesitated. "She works here." The words hit Eliza like a slap. It was as if she'd been erased. Dalva tried to ease the tension, but the atmosphere was unbearable. Eliza wanted to leave, but she couldn't. Something told her this wasn't over. There was something behind Teresa's eyes, something that didn't look like regret. That night, while everyone was asleep, Eliza heard footsteps again in the hallway. But this time, they weren't Augusto's. The door creaked open slowly, and Teresa stepped inside. She stood in the darkness, her face partially lit by moonlight. "Do you know what you're doing here?" she asked, her tone cryptic. Eliza didn't reply. Her heart was pounding so hard it hurt. "He may seem cold, but he's weaker than you think," Teresa whispered before walking out, leaving the door open behind her. Eliza didn't sleep a single minute after that dot in the following days. The farm was suffocated by unbearable tension. Teresa seemed determined to reclaim everything. The house, the routine, the man. But something felt off. She showed no affection for Augusto, only control. He, in turn, was quieter than ever, his eyes distant, like he was reliving a nightmare. One afternoon, while cleaning behind a dresser, Eliza found an old note. It was from Teresa, dated years ago. She had written that she needed to flee, that she feared for her life, and that if anything happened, it wouldn't be an accident. That changed everything. With trembling hands, Eliza brought the note to Dalva, who turned pale as she read it. My God, ... I knew something was wrong. She didn't come back for love. She came back for something she left behind. Eliza felt a chill run through her spine. That farmhouse. The past was coming back thirsty for destruction. And Augusto's silence now was fear. But what exactly did Teresa want? And why had she lied about disappearing? It was time to find out, before someone got hurt, or worse, before it was too late. The next morning, Eliza woke up with her mind made up. This wasn't just about feelings anymore. It was about survival. Teresa's presence on the farm was like poison seeping through the cracks of a vase already fractured. Everything felt on the verge of breaking. Eliza headed to the barn to fetch some hay, but at the back of the storage room, she spotted something covered by a dark tarp. Pulling it back, she found an old wooden chest with iron locks. She forced the lid open, and among moldy papers and faded photographs, there it was, a notebook with elegant handwriting. Teresa's diary. And what was written inside would change everything. On its yellowed pages, Teresa wrote about a man named Raoul, a former foreman on the farm. The entries described an affair between them, but also revealed darker things: manipulation, threats, and even a secret escape plan involving hidden money. The final entry read, if Raoul betrays, I'll leave everything behind, but he'll never know where I hid what's mine. Eliza closed the diary with clammy hands. Now it all made sense. Teresa hadn't come back for Augusto, or out of regret. She came back for what she left behind, and Eliza's presence was in her way. Later, in the barn, Eliza confronted Augusto. Did you know about this? He looked at her with weary eyes. I knew she wasn't who she pretended to be, but part of me wanted to believe anyway. The man who always seemed carved from stone now looked like he was made of sand, crumbling. Eliza showed him the diary. He took it gently, flipped through the pages, then closed his eyes as if holding back tears he no longer had strength to shed. This confirms what I feared. I was just the last obstacle. In that moment, Eliza realized he wasn't an accomplice, he was a target. That night, while the farm slept, Dalva knocked on Eliza's door. Girl, wake up. You need to see this. They went down to the kitchen, where the old woman revealed a backpack hidden behind the firewood. Inside were antique jewels, documents, and a bundle of money wrapped in musty fabric. I found this while grabbing wood. It's hers. She was trying to sneak out in the middle of the night. Eliza's blood ran cold. Teresa had been planning to vanish again, but this time, taking what she came for. A perfect plan. Almost perfect. Augusto arrived shortly after, summoned by Dalva. When he saw the backpack, he collapsed into a chair. She's going to try again, but this time, it might be dangerous. In the middle of the night, they heard the creak of the front gate. Eliza and Augusto slipped out through the side, staying hidden in the shadows of the corral. Teresa, with the backpack slung over her shoulders, was walking toward the road where a car was waiting. Eliza reached her first. Why did you come back? Why didn't you just leave it all behind? Teresa turned slowly, her eyes blazing. Because none of this belongs to him. It was mine. And I don't leave what's mine behind. The tension broke at the sound of hurried footsteps. It was Augusto. But something in his expression had changed. He didn't run, didn't yell. He just stood there. Go, take what you want. But don't ever come back, he said, voice trembling, but resolute. Teresa stared at him with contempt, then turned away and stepped into the car, which disappeared down the road without looking back. A heavy silence fell over the three of them. Eliza looked at Augusto. He seemed both relieved and utterly broken. He had finally shed the weight he'd carried for so long, but at the cost of letting go of an entire past. A dark chapter had closed, but their story was far from over. Dawn brought a different kind of silence, not the silence of tension, but the quiet that lingers after a storm has passed. Teresa was gone, but the marks she left behind on the house, on Augusto, on Eliza, still clung to every corner. On the porch, Dalva scrubbed the floorboards like she was trying to erase the last footsteps of the woman who nearly destroyed everything. Eliza, her mind still reeling, sat on the steps and watched Augusto walk out of the house with an expression she had never seen before. Lost, no longer shielded by coldness, no longer chained to the past, just human. At breakfast, Eliza hesitated. Before sitting down, there was a new distance between them, not built on fear, but on exposure. Now she knew too much. She knew about Teresa. She knew his pain. Augusto served himself in silence, but when he looked into her eyes, he said, "Thank you for staying." 4 simple words, but to Eliza, it felt like stones being lifted from his chest. She gave a soft smile and replied in a whisper, "I still don't know why, but I couldn't walk away." That moment sealed something invisible between them, a kind of pact, a silent promise. But not everything had been resolved. That afternoon, while organizing the room Teresa used as her office, Eliza found a sealed letter addressed to Raul, the former foreman mentioned in the diary. Sane stranger who had shown up days earlier. His name sent a chill down her spine. She carefully opened the letter. The contents were chilling. Instructions to find something hidden on the farm. An item wrapped in cloth, stored inside a wooden box beneath the foundation of the old shed. The letter read, "If anything happens to me, recover what I hid. It's the only thing that matters to me." Eliza rushed to find Dalva. Together, they headed to the abandoned shed. The structure was unstable, but Eliza was determined. They dragged aside boards, lifted stones, and after hours of searching, found the box described in the letter. Inside, an old revolver wrapped in rags, and a diamond necklace folded in a handkerchief embroidered with the initials T.A., Teresa. Andrade. Eliza understood it all now. Teresa never wanted Augusto's love back, only what she believed was hers. And Raul? Maybe he was closer than they thought. Or worse, maybe he was just waiting for the perfect moment to come back and finish what he started. By nightfall, Eliza decided to tell Augusto everything. He listened in complete silence, not interrupting once. At the end, he took the revolver in both hands, stared at it for a long moment, and simply said, "She's not coming back." Eliza didn't know if that was certainty or hope, but something in his eyes, a blend of fear and resolve, told her he knew Raul was still lurking somewhere. That this story wasn't over yet, but for the first time, Augusto didn't seem like he wanted to run. He looked ready to protect what had begun to grow in his life again. That night, Eliza went upstairs without saying much. Her head was heavy, her body drained, but just before lying down, she heard a soft knock at the door. It was Augusto. He stood there, holding an old book with a worn cover. It was Teresa's. I wrote in it, "Before everything turned dark." He handed it to her. "Maybe you'll understand?" Eliza took it gently. As he turned to leave, she said softly, "You're not alone anymore." He paused, didn't turn around, but whispered, "I know." And the sound of his footsteps walking away, for the first time, felt light, as if something inside him had finally been set free. The cold that morning felt different. It wasn't the cold of rejection anymore, nor the suffocating chill of loneliness. It was a cold that invited a new beginning. Eliza woke with the book Augusto had given her still in her hands, the scent. of aged paper mixed with dried lavender filling the room. In the first few pages, she found handwritten notes, firm strokes filled with scattered memories of a love that once was, but had slowly turned into guilt. With every line, Augusto revealed pieces of himself. There were no more secrets. Now he stood naked before her, not his body, but his soul. During breakfast, Eliza avoided mentioning the contents of the book. She needed time to absorb it all. But Augusto, sensing her silence, spoke quietly. It was the only way I could begin to make things right, telling the truth. She simply nodded with a soft smile. Dalva, always watchful, observed them with the knowing eyes of someone who's seen love bloom in the middle of chaos. That morning, everything felt different. There were no harshly given tasks, no clipped commands. Augusto walked with Eliza to the corral. They moved side by side. The silence between them was no longer awkward. It was shared. While gathering hay for the horses, Eliza asked, "Did you write it out of anger or longing?" He paused, thoughtful. "Out of fear. Because when you feel too much and don't know what to do with it, you write. It's like screaming without using your mouth." His words cut through her like cold wind, but laced with truth. Augusto, the man made of stone, was slowly learning how to peel back the layers. His shell was still thick, but cracks had begun to let light in. And Eliza was that light, even without trying, even without knowing. On the way back to the house, they found Maria, an old neighbor from the region, standing at the gate. She looked anxious, clutching a crumpled newspaper. "It's in the crime section. Raul was seen around here. They say he's hiding nearby, asking questions about Teresa." Just hearing his name sent a chill down their spines. Augusto grabbed the paper and confirmed it. The sketch left no doubt. He was back. The danger hadn't passed. But this time, no one would run. "If he shows up here, I'll end this," Augusto said, eyes blazing. But Eliza knew violence wasn't the answer. Not this time. Later, while organizing the storage room, Eliza came across an old photo of 3 people: Augusto, Teresa, and Raul. They were smiling. It was a past that didn't match the stories of pain she'd come to know. Then, on the back of the photo, a handwritten phrase: "Truth is only one, but the eyes that see it are many." The words echoed in her mind. What if things were more complicated than they seemed? What if Teresa, Raul, and Augusto were all tangled in a web of guilt none of them truly wanted to unravel? It was time to dig deeper. That night, Eliza walked to Augusto's room and knocked firmly. "We need to talk." He opened the door without hesitation. The air smelled of candle wax and old wood. "Teresa, she was your guilt, and Raul, your shadow. But I won't be another ghost in this house." Augusto stepped closer, his gaze intense. "You're not. You're the first living thing to walk through that door in a long time." For a moment, they stood face to face, the past hovering between them, the future waiting for a decision. And in the middle of it all, the present asking for just one thing: courage. The mountain wind blew stronger that night, as if nature itself sensed that something was about to happen. Eliza couldn't sleep. Augusto's words still echoed in her mind. "You're the first living thing to walk through this house in a long time." It was as if he had finally admitted there was room for a new beginning. But deep down she knew, as long as Raul was still out there, peace would be nothing more than a temporary illusion. And what hurt most was knowing Augusto was willing to sacrifice himself, if necessary. But she didn't want to save him. She wanted them to be saved, together. The next day, Eliza went into town for supplies. The market was buzzing with rumors. People said Raul had been seen near the eucalyptus trail, asking about something valuable. Fear spread again like smoke in dry woods. But it was when she passed through the main square that everything happened. A tall, hooded man crossed the street and began following her. She quickened her pace. So did he. She slipped into a narrow alley, tried to lose him, but he caught up and grabbed her arm tightly. "You're the girl from Augusto's farm, right?" His voice was cold as stone. It was Raul. Eliza's heart pounded. He didn't seem violent, but something in his stare felt rotten. "You have what's mine," he said, leaning in. "The necklace, the letter. I know you found it." She tried to deny it, but he gripped harder. "If you don't give it to me by tomorrow, I'll be back. And next time, I won't come alone." She managed to break free with a shove and ran, his voice echoing behind her. This was never about Augusto. It's about what's buried. She returned to the farm breathless, shaking. Augusto listened in silence. Then he took a deep breath. "Then this is it. The past is back. And this time, we bury it for good." That night, the two locked themselves in the office and made a plan. Eliza suggested using the necklace as bait. Augusto hesitated. "It's too dangerous." But she stood firm. "Raul doesn't want blood. He wants what he lost. We'll give it to him our way." The next day, they left a note at the village entrance, marking a location: the Wolf Ridge Overlook. Isolated, high up, surrounded by pine trees, and reachable only by a narrow trail. A place where you could see everything, and where one wrong move could be fatal. It was risky, but it had to be done. They arrived at the overlook before sunset. Eliza wore the necklace and held Teresa's diary. Augusto carried an old shotgun. "Just in case," he said. The wind stung their faces. Time felt frozen up there, until Raul appeared, alone, empty-handed, but his eyes carried years of unresolved hatred. "Nice spot you picked to die," he sneered. Augusto stepped forward. "There's no death here, only truth." Raul laughed. "You still believe that? That saying the truth makes everything okay?" Eliza held out the diary. "Teresa lied to you too. She wasn't coming back. She was going to disappear again. With the money. With the necklace." Raul froze. The smile vanished. He took the diary with shaking hands and flipped through it. When he reached the final pages, something in him shattered. "She was going to leave me?" Augusto nodded, his gaze heavy. Raul fell to his knees, as if the ground had crumbled. Beneath him, the silence that followed was the silence of a man finally seeing what he had refused to face. What he wanted was never his. Maybe it never belonged to anyone. Eliza stepped forward, removed the necklace from her neck, and placed it in his hand. "Here, take it. Go, but don't ever come back. Whatever was left of the past ends here." Raul looked at them both, eyes filled with tears, but said nothing. He simply got up and walked away, disappearing into the trees like a tired shadow. In that instant, the weight of years seemed to dissolve into the cold mountain air. Augusto let out a breath that carried the force of decades. "You ended a war without firing a single shot," he said. Eliza smiled. "Sometimes, all it takes is someone willing to listen to the end of the story." The walk back to the farmhouse was quiet, but not heavy. It was as if each step now touched lighter ground, cleansed by everything that had been left behind. The sky over Campos do Jordão was clear, and the moon shone with unusual intensity, as if it too were celebrating the end of a long chapter. Eliza gazed at the horizon with a new feeling. It wasn't fear, nor anguish. It was hope. For the first time since she crossed that old wooden gate, she felt she belonged there. Not because she was forced to, but because she built it. Because there, among stones, pain, and silence, she had grown roots. The next morning, Augusto seemed different. Not in his face, still as serious as ever, but in the way he walked, the way he breathed. For the first time, he was the one who made breakfast. They sat at the table with no rush. He buttered her bread, something he had never done before. A simple gesture, but loaded with meaning. The house is at peace. And so am I, he said, staring at the coffee pot as if speaking to his past. Eliza smiled. Even the smell has changed, she replied, glancing around. It was true. The air felt fresher. The stench of pain had given way to the subtle scent of a new beginning. Out by the corral, Augusto began teaching Eliza how to ride. He held the reins beside her, guiding her firmly, but gently. With every stumble, a word of encouragement. With every small victory, a quiet smile. You learn fast, he said. Maybe because I learned to listen slowly, she replied. He laughed for the first time, short but real. In that moment, it was as if all the bitterness had stepped back. There was no armor anymore, no frightened girl. Just a man and a woman discovering in each other the unexpected comfort of those who've survived. Dalva, ever observant, watched from a distance with misty eyes. One late afternoon she called Eliza into the kitchen and said, I never thought I'd see this place smile again. Eliza smiled too. I just stayed. The rest, it happened on its own. Dalva cupped her face gently. You brought light, girl. And light, it doesn't ask. It doesn't demand. It just arrives. And you arrived when he needed it most. Those words echoed in Eliza's heart. For years, she had felt unwanted, sold off, rejected. But now, she was seen. For the first time, someone saw her as a presence, not a burden. That same night, Augusto appeared on the porch, holding a small gift wrapped in a blue cloth. He handed it to her without a word. Eliza opened it slowly. It was a locket engraved with the image of a rose, and inside, a tiny photo of her smiling beside one of the horses. I had it developed in secret. Dalva helped, he murmured, embarrassed. Eliza was speechless. Why give me this? Augusto took a deep breath. Because now, when I look at you, I remember what it's like to have a reason to stay. The words came raw, but full of truth. And she understood. The man who once seemed incapable of love was learning to love. The night unfolded in quiet, meaningful ways. The clear sky, the chirping crickets, the wood creaking under slow footsteps. Eliza returned to her room with the locket pressed against her chest, feeling it beat in sync with her heart. That house, once cold and threatening, now felt like home. The man who once bought her with indifference now looked at her as someone of value in every detail. But even in the warmth of their newfound peace, one final surprise was still on its way. Something tucked deep in a drawer, an envelope with no sender, and inside, a confession that would call everything into question. The story wasn't over yet. It was just past midnight when Eliza awoke to a faint creak on the wooden floor. A subtle crack, like something shifting out of place. She thought of ignoring it, but her heart was racing. She slipped on her boots and, guided by the soft glow of a lantern, made her way to the office. The door stood slightly ajar, revealing Augusto asleep in the armchair. A white envelope lying on the floor beside him. She crouched to pick it up. It was sealed, but the handwriting was familiar. Teresa. Eliza's chest tightened. She hesitated, looked at Augusto, then at the envelope, and finally opened it. The letter was brief, but each word cut like a knife. Augusto, if you're reading this, it means I chose not to come back, not out of fear or revenge, but because I finally understood our time died. You didn't kill me, but you killed who I used to be. And maybe I killed what was good in you. If someone makes you smile again, let them. If someone wants to stay, don't push them away. And if you can love, even if it hurts. Because I couldn't. Eliza felt the air leave her lungs for a moment. This was the final confession, and the release he had needed for so long. The next morning, she left the letter on the table and went out to feed the horses. Augusto woke to the sound of hooves in the stable and found the envelope already opened. He read it in silence. His hands trembled, but his eyes stayed steady. When Eliza returned, she saw him leaning against the doorway, holding a wildflower between his fingers. "She set you free," she said. Augusto nodded. "But only because you showed me how." In that moment, there were no more secrets. More passed. Just two survivors, of broken love, of old wounds, who now had a real chance to begin again. Days passed. The farmhouse breathed a different air. The chores were the same, but now there was laughter by the fences, soft voices in the rooms, and even the old radio played forgotten songs. Dalva baked cakes, Eliza picked flowers to brighten the kitchen, and Augusto, he smiled, not the kind of smile you wear, the kind you allow. And even among the scars time couldn't erase, something new had begun to bloom, not in words, but in gestures. Eliza knew this man would never be a poet, but now he was writing in actions, and that was more than she ever hoped for. One golden afternoon, as the sun slipped behind the hills, Augusto called her out to the orchard. In the center stood a dead tree, long since barren. He pointed to its base. "Plant it here," he said, handing her a rose bush sapling. "Why here?" she asked. He gave a faint smile. "Because it's where everything died, and where everything needs to be reborn." Eliza knelt, and with her hands in the cold earth, buried that sapling with a care that felt almost sacred. She knew it wasn't just a flower. It was a promise that even the driest soil can bloom again. As dusk settled in, they sat side by side on the porch, watching the colors of the sky shift. The silence that once felt suffocating was now peaceful. "You know what I feared the most?" Augusto asked. "What?" "Getting used to you, and then losing you." Eliza took a deep breath. "Then let's make a deal. You don't hide anymore, and I won't run." He held out his hand. She took it, and in that firm grip, without vows or rings, a new chapter began. A quiet kind of love built on patience, respect, and scars. And if you made it this far, heart racing, eyes full, drop a comment below. Do you believe even the coldest hearts can learn to love? Don't forget to subscribe to the channel and tell me what stories you want to hear next. Because this was just the beginning.